Hey, it's me, and I'm back for another video. This time we're gonna talk about the latest news and updates in the world of the NBA. First on the menu, Vince Carter has announced his retirement to the game of basketball after 22 wonderful years in the National Basketball Association. Of course, Vince Carter was the number 5 pick of the 1998 NBA draft. He was selected by the Golden State Warriors but was involved in a draft day trade with his fellow UNC alumni Antoine Jameson that sent him to the Toronto Raptors, where he spent his prime and he spent the first few years of his wonderful career. Of course, we all know his slam dunk championship in 2000. Also spent his best years in Toronto, leading the Raptors to numerous playoff appearances, and that's when he became Vinsanity. Then after that, he went to the New Jersey Nets when he paired up with Jason Kidd and Richard Jefferson to again more playoff appearances during his time there. And then he became a journeyman after that. He was traded to the Orlando Magic. He played for a year there. Then he went to the Phoenix Suns. Then after his stint with the Suns, he went to the Dallas Mavericks. And then after that, he rounded out his career playing for the Grizzlies, the Sacramento Kings, and the Atlanta Hawks. Vince Carter was going to be probably considered as the greatest dunker in the history of the NBA. There's no player who's a better in-game and the competition dunker than Vince Carter. He's just one of the most electrifying players to ever play in the NBA. The nightly highlights, of course, some of his memorable plays were his dunks over Dikembe, and that one dunk he had against Alonzo Mourning when he went behind the back and then just rammed it right on Alonzo Mourning's head. So, when it comes to Vince Carter, the question is he a Hall of Famer? Sorry about that. Is Vince Carter a Hall of Famer? And my answer to that question is yes, but he's not first ballot. He's not first ballot Hall of Famer, but I believe he is going to eventually be there. But when you look at when he will be eligible for the Hall of Fame, it's not that far-fetched that he will become a first ballot, because when you look at who else retired this year, there's he really have no competition for that Hall of Fame spot. So it's pretty much a guarantee that maybe in 2024, when he becomes eligible for the Hall of Fame induction, that he's gonna get an automatic bid. And he's one of the greatest, most electrifying players to ever step foot in the NBA, Vince Carter. But it's weird because his career, he was a role player even longer than he was a superstar. Because if you look at his career, his Toronto days, yes, he was a superstar. So that's like what, 7 years? And then when we went to New Jersey, that was when he was still like kind of a star, but he wasn't the same superstar that he was in Toronto. So he was still a star alongside Jason Kidd. So add maybe like 3 years to that. And then when he came to Orlando, that's when he became the role player. He transitioned his play style into being a really effective role player, and that's one of the reasons why his career went long as it did. Because at the beginning of his career, he was known as a dunker. He was known as a high flyer. Didn't really had any reliable jump shot, but he developed his jump shot after he left Toronto. And then when he came to Dallas, he was already a good 3-point shooter, and that basically extended his career until his last days in Atlanta. It was that 3-point shot that was the key to as to why his career went long as it did. He refined his game during the later parts of his prime, and he became a valuable contributor to those Mavericks teams that went to the playoffs, and also to the Suns teams, and the the Memphis teams that also went to the playoffs when he played there. So for me, he's not like a bona fide superstar. Like he was a superstar at the beginning of his career, but I would put him in the same vein as those like Grant Hill, uh, and Andre Iguodala. Those types of players that they were superstars at the beginning of their career, but they transitioned well into that into that role player role player status by the end of it, and it wasn't like a problem with Vince. He wasn't like Allen Iverson, who at the end of his career he was kind of whiny, and a reason why he was out of the league by 2010, because he wasn't he wasn't accepting a role player status on his teams. That's why he got bounced out, because he wasn't he didn't want to accept that role. And same thing with Melo before he got picked up by the Trailblazers. Didn't want to come off the bench, But Vince Carter wasn't a problem with him. The transition was pretty smooth, and that's why he played in the NBA for like 22 years. And it's also surprising considering the injuries that he got during his Toronto days. By the end of his Raptor days, he was pretty much injury prone. Like he had foot issues, he had back issues that pretty much bothered him during his last seasons with the Raptors. But he took care of his health, he took care of his body, and now he's happily retired after playing 22 wonderful years in the NBA. So congrats to Mr. Carter, and thank you for his contributions to the game. And he will always be remembered as one of the greatest dunkers in the history of basketball. So let's move on to another topic that has graced the NBA world recently, and it's that the 16 NBA players tested positive for the coronavirus out of 302 players who was tested last June 23. I am not entirely sure if those players who were announced were part of those 16 players, but nothing has been said, nothing has been made, so let's just assume that there's only 16 players that tested positive. If you would look at the sample size, 300 players, having 16 positive, that's quite the good news. That's a good news, because at least these 16 players can be isolated, they can be treated before they can join their teams for training camp as the continuation of the NBA season nears. We are already we're just a month away, I think. Yes, we're before the July 30th continuation of the 2019-2020 NBA season. Most of these players, I think, will recover, and they will be back just in time for the training camp that is slated at the beginning of July next month. So there, I admit I had that panic when the news of the positives came out a few days ago, but now I realize that the NBA expected this would happen. Like they already foreseen that these players would that some players would test positive, and so the NBA did a good job of testing these players before training camp, and I think some of these players will be cleared by next week. So let's just hope that no other NBA players would test positive anymore. But Adam Silver has alluded to the fact that if the spread of the virus is significant during the bubble, what I mean by that is when the players already entered Orlando, already entered Disney World, if there's a significant spread of the virus, there will always be a chance that this season would get canceled outright. This season will be canceled immediately. So let's just hope that these teams and these players are taking every safety precautionary measure in order to keep their players, their staff, and everyone in their organization that will be in Orlando safe and sound, so that we can finish this season as it should, and with a champion at least. Speaking of it, the NBA finally they released the schedule for the upcoming July 30th continuation of the season. They're calling it the seeding games because this 8 regular season games will determine the seeding for the 16 playoff teams that would play the playoffs in mid-August. So the first game will be on the July 30th. It will be the Jazz against the Pelicans, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. here. And then the Lakers and the Clippers. That's an interesting matchup right there. I think this game was supposed to happen January 27th, if I'm not mistaken. This game was supposed to happen 2 days after the tragic Kobe accident, but the NBA canceled it. The NBA rescheduled it, and it will happen July 30th, July 31st here in the Philippines. So let's watch out for that. The rest of the schedules are posted on the NBA's Facebook page, the NBA Twitter page, and you can just see them on those social media sites of the NBA. And I'm just excited, man. I'm excited, but at the same time, I am aware that there might be a possibility that this season will still get canceled. It really depends on how Florida handles this crisis. I really believe so, because Florida is getting worse every single day. There's been a recent spike in coronavirus cases, and their local government is not really taking this seriously. I don't think so, because they're literally not. People are not wearing masks. I don't know why. It's frustrating to see the situation in Florida. So, but the NBA is doing everything they can in order to this to happen, in order for the season to continue. So let's just hope and pray, but at the same time, let's be all excited that basketball will be back in 1 month's time. So that's it for this video. If you have any comments, violent reactions, just hit me up in the comment section. And again, stay safe and have a good day.